What's happening everyone, TomGorian here, and the first deep dive trailer for F124 has just dropped. This first deep dive of F124 is looking at the gameplay and the changes that EA and Codemasters have made when it comes to realistically the front end of the cars. How the suspension, the front wings, the tyre temperatures and the warm-up phase, and also how dirty air, slipstream and the setup, how every part of that element of racing in F124 changes how the car reacts and behaves on track. It was a very interesting video. It wasn't that long, it was only like 3, 4, 5 minutes long as Alex was doing commentary, providing and describing the updates and changes that F124 has had over 23, and they also had the bigger names in the community such as Tim at Marduk, Alex Gillen, GB, all of those guys. They were there at an event playing the game and really talking about the changes. I don't know if they were paid off by EA or Codemasters or something, or if they're actually telling the truth as far as how the car feels as far as all these changes that they've made. But I thought it was a very strategic and very interesting video talking about how the car behaves during certain periods of the race and certain track temperatures, and how the car reacts to certain elements. So in this video they start off by talking about the suspension and the changes that they've made with the EA dynamic handling system, as far as also getting some of the gameplay footage as well. We get footage of Monaco, we get footage of Suzuka with the curves and the dips and stuff. And they've really altered the suspension as far as how the suspension reacts to certain curbs and certain bumps of a track. And apparently, according to the content creators who are playing the game, who they got footage for, apparently it makes the car react more, and apparently the car is more predictable in high speed corners. It does remind me of what they did back in F1 2018 and when they did work on the suspension. So maybe it's one of those things where you do feel it over the first couple of weeks of the new game's launch, and then it's not that new anymore. But hopefully it's not that bad. But it looks like they have made a further step as far as trying to get more into a simulation type F1 game. They also talk about the weight distribution of the F1 cars in F124 and how the weight really sways from one side to the other depending on what corner you're entering or exiting and how fast or slowly you're going. So for example, let's say you're going through turn 1 like they showed in Kota, how you're going down the hill and then in towards the fast right-hander before the S section. They've talked about how the weight of the car really leans on the left side, and I think you are really going to feel the weight as far as either race fuel or just how the suspension, how your setup works. And I think they're really trying to imply that the skill gap as far as setups and the suspension geometry, how that works with the dampers, how that all links up to one another to really make a bit of a balance in weight in F124. So the second element of the video talks about the new tire wear model, what they're calling thermal model, how pretty much the tire reacts to high speed and low speed corners. It also depends on tire pressures and how much load you are putting onto the tire when it comes to certain corners or the entries or exits or corners. They made a footage of Hamilton going wide at the double left-hander in Bahrain to really show this as far as like the tire. I think it was the front right of the tire being overheated. So I really think this year with F124 the tire warm-up is going to be very important as far as trying to get that qualifying lap in, and not just the tire warm-up but in the race, trying to manage the temperatures as far as not making the tires overly too hot to the point where you lose front end grip and you understeer, and maybe even the rear tires as well as far as you oversteering. But I do think they've went for a more F1 2018 style of approach as far as the tire warm-up, tire pressures and just the temperature, and not just the tire temperature and how that affects the car, but how the track temperature how that generates either heat into the tire, or how that pretty much cooks the tire. There's been several instances in real life where the track temperature, let's say 4 years ago, where was it Hungary or something, where they raced in July or August, and like the track temperature was like 70-60 degrees. So like the track temperature was heating, cooking literally the tires. That can really have a major impact as far as the lifespan and the impact of a tire over a stint. So I'm really getting the feel that they've worked the front end of the car, and how if you're reckless as far as the janky movements and just moving the car all the time after the corner exits, how that's really going to pretty much mess up the tyre further and further on into a stint. I think the meta as far as the first month or two, as far as F1 24, is going to be try to get in clean air as much as possible. I think clean air is going to be a very important factor when it comes to not just dry racing, as far as following a car lap after lap after lap. Obviously with F1 23 we had the DRS trains. We sometimes would have 3, 4, 5 DRS trains and just sitting behind, and the only thing it really affected is realistically the engine. Now you can't really do that, because if you follow a car ahead for 2, 3 or 4 laps, the front tires are going to be cooked to the point where you're going to have to try and move out of the dirty air for clean, fresh air to cool the tires down, and even that might not be enough to try and help you gain performance with that. But it's not the dry conditions that they're also on about, it's also how the tire is in wet conditions as well. And I really like, obviously it was like this with 23, as far as you using wet lines, going wide on corner entry and then coming back in on a corner exit and trying to really cool the inters or the wet tires down with wet puddles, especially if it's on a drying circuit. Just trying to move out the slipstream or the dirty air just to try and cool the tires down. I think clean air will be the meta as far as F1 24, and I think if you have the more clean air, the better your tires will be for a stint. So now for the third element of this video, they talk about the aero model, how they've reworked the aero model with their own virtual wind tunnel to try and simulate the airflow, not only in clean air but also with things like slipstream and also the DRS. It's again, they've worked on this again to the point where you will clearly feel a loss in downforce, but a significant boost in drag reduction, of course with slipstream and with the DRS. That's what it's supposed to do. But apparently with this version in the game, it's going to be more than ever, to the point where even in clean air, even after you've gotten the overtake, you're going to feel that sudden loss of downforce, around about 2 or 3% of downforce, even with the overtake. So I think it's just going to be one of those things where we might or we might not see more DRS trains. I don't think we will, because of the tyre physics and the tyre temperatures, and how the temperatures from just the circuit and the track temperature itself is going to affect the tyre life. But I feel like slipstream might be overpowered again like it was back in F1 2016. They also pointlessly go into detail about the car performance in F1 24's gameplay deep dive, talking about how the Williams will perform better at Monza than it will in Monaco. That, yeah, no shit. Of course, that's what the game's there for. It's not going to affect multiplayer, is it? It's not going to affect online. It's only going to affect the single player performance of the car. Of course, if you've been watching Formula 1, you know that the Williams is good in a straight line. It's got pretty much less drag. It's got a good Mercedes engine. We know that the Williams performs very well in engine-powered long straight circuits like Las Vegas, like Italy, like Canada. Of course, it doesn't have the downforce that the Red Bull or the Ferrari or the Mercedes has, but it has maybe just as much drag on it. I think that kind of that point of the video was really pointless to explain that different cars will perform differently at different circuits, because we know this. So the final element that they talk in this gameplay deep dive is about the engine and how engine power has been updated or worked on as far as F1 24, as far as how you harvest and recover the ERS, energy recovery systems, energy and the battery to use on the main straight. So pretty much, as you can see in the trailer, you've got 3 different different options for the transmission. Of course, you have the on throttle and the off throttle that we had, you know, in the last couple of years, but we have this new feature called engine braking. Now, I think what it's supposed to do, so for example, right now it's on 50, but I think it's got a 0 to 100 max. So I think if it's on max 100, I think it's going to save more battery, but I think it might use more engine power, which means you might be more slower on the straight regards of the setup. However, if you put it more to 0, then it's going to save less battery under braking and in slow speed corners and focus more on just the raw engine power. So I think we'll have to try and find the meta as far as what balance it is. If it's higher, if it's lower, if it's right in the middle with 50. They go into detail as far as, you know, lifting and coasting. Lifting and coasting will now be more of a thing in F1 24 than it was last year. But I'm very eager to see how this engine braking, you know, how it works and how it really affects the engine, the temperature of the engine, the battery, you know, how much battery do you recover over a lap and over a stint, and how much battery you can save over a lap, because if you get it right, that could be the difference between winning a race and getting second place. And finally, to round out this video, they also talk about the ERS modes in F1 24. We finally have every single mode back into every session. So as far as we have non, medium, hot lap and overtake in F1 24, it doesn't matter if it's in a qualifying session or if it's in a race session. You can use overtake in qualifying and you can use hot lap mode in a race. So that's a bit of a minor point, but yeah, it's something, I guess. And that was the gameplay deep dive video for F1 24. It seems like they've put a lot of work into the front end of the car and how the air interacts in every element, as far as, you know, the chassis, front wing, the downforce that's generated behind and in front of the car, you know, the clean air, dirty air side of racing, the tire temperature as far as the warm-up phase, as far as the just the cornering and how the cornering impacts the tire's life through the load, and also how the drag with the DRS and the engine braking, how that affects straight line speed and straight line performance with the engines. Yeah, they've went more in detail and they've really crossed that line between that simulation and arcade style of game, which they've been doing so ever since 2018, and this is just a further evolution of it. Hopefully the final game doesn't feel the same as the one in the beta, because I can't lie, the handling in the beta was absolutely awful. I had no force feedback, but the weight was still there, and it just felt like the rear end of the car would step out in the most unpredictable of corners. So you saw how in the footage in like USA and COTA, let's say for example after the hairpin, after the straight, like you'd expect the throttle to step out. It doesn't step out in the throttle in the hairpin, but it would step out on the next corner after that in the most surprising way. And I didn't know if it was because of the differential, or if it was because of the front brake bias or whatever, but clearly it's different. It's clearly different than F1 23. I'm going to go so far as to say that you cannot load any F1 23 setup onto 24. It's simply not going to work. I think the main focus, I think the meta for F1 24 will be what it was in 22. I think straight line performance, I think lower wings, I think if you have maximum engine braking and low wings, I think that is going to be the meta as far as this year's game is concerned, but only time will tell. We are now over a month away from F1 24. Thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more F1 24 content. We've been rolling out with these interactions over the last 2-3 videos of F1 24, and hopefully we can keep going with this one. Thank you for watching. The next deep dive video will be the career mode, so look forward to that. And yeah, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, share, comment and subscribe for more F1 24 content, and I'll see you all in the next video in a bit.